Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you're having a great Thursday. Thank you to everyone who's watching today's live stream, whether you're watching on Instagram or Clinical Connections Mentoring Facebook group or on YouTube. I'm so happy that you're here and are here to listen to what I have to say today. Today, I'll be talking about teaching in different learning environments. So let me first start, for those of you who are new, by introducing myself. I'm Dr. Tim Miller. I'm a physical therapist, a mentor and coach to faculty members and clinicians who want to transition into teaching, and to also faculty members who are already in teaching. Um, I have worked obviously as a physical therapist, and then I transitioned into teaching through, I was a clinical faculty member at the University of South Florida, and then transitioned to a full-time faculty member at Nova Southeastern University Tampa campus, where I was faculty for 7 years as in a hybrid based program. And while there, I earned my EDD from University of Florida in educational technology. And now I work as the Director of Strategic Distance Education for Rehab Essentials, working with curricular and faculty development in post-professional occupational therapy and physical therapy programs, and also entry-level physical therapy programs. Um, so what I would like to do is, if you're watching live, please type live in the comments, and then I'd like you to tell me who you are and where you're from. So in the chat, tell me your name and where you're watching from. If you're watching the replay, please type replay and tell me who you are and where you're from. Also, drop in the comments if you're a current faculty member applying to become a teacher in any capacity, or maybe just thinking about transitioning into academics. Chances are you're here because at some point you've thought about transitioning into um, teaching, or maybe you're ready to start applying for teaching position. So now that you've seen or heard, you've probably seen or heard that there are different learning environments, especially post-pandemic, when a lot of either programs or parts of programs decided to keep a lot of their online components. So learning environments are important to know and understand because they impact you as and know how they impact you as a faculty member and an educator. So, overall, have you thought about what teaching environment you may want to teach in? Or have you thought about how you like to run your courses? Obviously the environment can influence your teaching style and philosophy, and what works well in one environment may not work well in another. So my goal in this is just to make you aware on a broad scale level of different learning environments and highlight the differences to help you prepare for the different jobs you'll be applying for in the future. In general, if we kind of boil it down, in general, types of learning environments can be divided into two large categories. The traditional face-to-face classroom, and then a blended learning environment, which blends online learning with some face-to-face component. And in the blended learning environment, it's obviously a continuum. There's not just one way to blend. So, on one end, one way I think a good way to think about it as we, talk through this discussion, or just in general, is on one end, I think of like a flipped model, and on the other end, a hybrid model. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in a minute. So I want to discuss again these environments to provide some insight on some key considerations for teaching in these environments, and really thinking through how to leverage the advantages that are inherent in each. Please, please know that no matter what the environment is, there's not one that's better or worse. They're just different, with different affordances and different advantages. So as faculty, you must have a clear understanding of what those affordances are in each environment, and take advantage for what's best suited for the environment that you are currently teaching in. There's a long-standing belief, or maybe it's not long-standing, but I encounter this a lot in physical therapy education, of thinking, well, if it's face-to-face, it's just better. Or if I can see them in the classroom, I can see that they're learning. I know that they're learning. And so sometimes there's just these just built-in biases for not knowing about or maybe just not having experience in blended learning, or just being so different and not really sure about it. But so again, let me talk about each of these environments, and I just want to kind of describe them and talk about experiences as a faculty member, some advantages, and even disadvantages in the sense of, maybe challenges or things that you just have to be aware of. So first, let's start again with that traditional residential model that many of us are familiar with. I know that's, how I was educated, in undergrad and, PT school and those types of things, where, the first exposure to the course content is typically a lecture done in the class. And then the assimilation or application of the content is typically done outside of the class via homework or, those types of things. So as a faculty member in a program like this, you are spending your time on those face-to-face lectures and presentations, getting ready for the class time when everybody is all together, typically, if not every day, multiple times a week, and then work through assignments and assessments, or create those that the learners are going to complete outside of class and, guide the application of the content. So in my experience, some advantages of teaching this environment is, when you're providing a presentation or a lecture, you can read the room. You can gain a sense if you're reaching the learners, if they're lost, and you can adjust on the fly as needed. You can also ask, or I'm sorry, the learners can ask you questions and you can answer questions and have clarifying points in real time, again, sometimes on the fly, and sometimes that discussion, has those dynamics in the sense of present something, questions come up, and you have that response and that back and forth. Um, some challenges is, the class time or your face-to-face time is typically spent on what's considered, lower forms of cognitive work, and the higher forms of application are done outside of class. So again, it's a very simplistic view of it, and it's not saying there's anything wrong, but a lot of times that class time is spent, providing those lectures, and the learners may be just kind of consuming that. And then the application piece, while there may be some class time devoted to it, a lot of that happens, via homework or those follow-up types of assignments that they need to complete. So let's move on to blended learning, again, which is combining online and face-to-face. And I want to start the discussion of blended on one end, or the way I think of it is one end on the continuum, is a flipped model, where the first exposure to the course content, the lectures and presentations, are done outside of class via a asynchronous pre-recorded lecture or presentation or video. And in this case, the learners listen or play that content on their own schedule prior to arriving at the face-to-face class. So they need to make sure that they do the work to prepare for it. Typical blended models don't necessarily replace face-to-face class time, but instead they, flip how the face-to-face time is being used, where you're not lecturing during that time. But a simple way to think of it is the lectures are pre-recorded. The learners go through them before arriving to the face-to-face class. And then so a traditional residential type program can use a flip model or have courses within there that use a flip model. And but they are still there in person on campus, typically as they normally would be. In this model, assimilation application of the content is typically done in class with the support of the faculty, yourself, and peers. And as a faculty member teaching in a flipped environment, you'll have to spend your time, really with that pre-recording your lectures and your presentations. So there's a lot of work that's front-loaded, so that learners have access to all the lectures and presentations that you need them to watch prior to that time. Additionally, the environment, in a flip model really requires you to rethink what it is you're going to do during that face-to-face class time. And, obviously purposeful planning. It's not, okay, we're just going to lecture on this and see, where the discussion goes. It's, okay, they've already had the lecture. Now during the face-to-face time, what is it that we're going to do, with that content? So since you're not going to lecture, you have to think through how you want to guide them or put the content together or the application or review of that content. So advantages of teaching in this environment, the class time is not spent lecturing, but instead, in the literature, they say, the class time really needs to be spent, with higher forms of cognitive work through that application and assimilation of the content. So you can spend your energy and time with your learners on review and putting it together rather than just introducing the content or just lecturing, because you've already recorded those and they arrive to class with that background knowledge. And so that class time is really taking advantage of, okay, now they have some background knowledge. Now what are we going to do, to help guide that learning? Another advantage, on the learning side is, the learners can pause, slow down, speed up, rewatch your presentations, which can help facilitate learning where, they have that ability, versus when you're in the classroom, they don't have that ability to rewatch what it was that you just lectured on. Some challenges, as faculty is recording lectures can be really challenging, especially if you don't have a good understanding of best practices for creating asynchronous content. Depending on what support you have at your institution, you may just be trying to figure it out on your own. Are you going to be on video, not on video, as a voiceover? I mean, there's just a lot to think through. And if you're not familiar with that, it can be really overwhelming. And there are, some really clear best practices that all faculty, should follow who are creating, asynchronous content. And sometimes I would say another challenge is that the face-to-face time is scheduled, whether it's needed or not. And I think that kind of goes into those, just traditional built-in, this is how it's always been done. So we need to make sure that they're in the classroom for these hours, these days, and what, kind of planning that time before, or just scheduling that time before it's planned, I guess I should say. So, sometimes, it's planned whether it's needed or not. And often what could happen is a pitfall of that time is reteaching things that are already in the recorded content, because, for faculty, sometimes that's comfortable for you, for the learners, that's comfortable for them to rehear it. So that's a pitfall you need to really try to avoid. And it's not an effective use of time, and it's not taking advantage of the flipped model where they should have, where they should have an understanding of that content before arriving to class. And lastly, I just want to discuss on the other end, or the way I think of it is the other end of the blended learning continuum is a hybrid model, or oftentimes you'll hear of a hybrid program, or we have a hybrid model, or those types of things. And this is very similar to a flipped model, except for the face-to-face class time is spread out a lot more. So for example, when I was faculty at Nova Southeastern University in Tampa, our hybrid model was the students, or the learners were, each month they were only on campus during face-to-face time 4 days a month. So there were 3.5 weeks that were completely online and completely asynchronous. They could work at their own pace. They just had to keep up with the weekly due dates. And then at the end of that, at the end of the last 4 days of that month or that unit would be that face-to-face class time on campus. There are other hybrid models that may meet much more infrequently. So learners in that type of environment are not, they may have class time maybe 1 week out of the whole semester. So out of like maybe a 15-week semester, they're only face-to-face for a week, and the rest of it is completely online. And again, so since the face-to-face time happens, is a lot more spread out. No matter, in that hybrid type model, whether it's, you see them once a month, once a semester, twice a semester, the learners in that type of environment are typically not required to live near campus, but instead they show up to where your campus may be, for those face-to-face times. And, that flexibility can be a big advantage. So, there could be learners who just aren't in a position in their lives where they're like, okay, I got into this school, now let me move to where that school is. They're like, okay, well, I can stay where I am, live at home, or, whatever it may be, and then show up just during those face-to-face scheduled time. As a faculty member teaching this environment, your workload is even more front-loaded than it is in a flipped environment, in the sense that you need to typically have, and I can speak from my experience, 1 month or even one semester's worth of content fully developed and created at the start of the semester. So you have to really carefully plan, plan that. You also need to really carefully plan, because the learners aren't in front of you to raise their hand if they have a question, ways for the learners to stay connected with you and with one another, including systems for them to be able to ask questions. So in that model, so, sometimes like if we think about the traditional model, obviously they're right in front of you. A flipped model, you see them really frequently so they can ask questions. So you really have to be thoughtful in the ways that you can, keep the feedback and communication going, and those types of things. You also have to really have a careful design and development of your online courses, using best practices for distance education. You have to make sure that learners are spending their time engaged in learning the content, not where to find it or wondering what to do or how to, again, the logistics of getting feedback, asking questions, those types of things. Um, I would overall, a few basic advantages or flexibility for you as a faculty member and also learners. Although it's front loaded, you do have some, there's a lot of flexibility built in. You're not, kind of boxed into this rigid schedule of, okay, classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 10. It's okay. You're planning this asynchronous content for them to go through each week. And then, kind of leading up to when you do see them finally face to face, whether that's once a month or, or less frequently. The face-to-face time, again, just like in a flip model, is really spent reviewing, applying, assimilating, and in this case, it's large amounts of content, which can make kind of that putting it. It can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but overall, I think it helps to put it all together a little bit more effectively in the sense of, if you have a month-long unit, it's like, okay, well, how are we gonna? Let's put this all together. Let's review, and so you have a lot more content that you're thinking through of putting, pulling it together. Some challenges is, that planning, designing, developing your online course can be, really challenging and requires that you have a good understanding of best practices of distance education and how to really put together a course in this fashion, especially if you don't have any experience as a learner or, as a faculty member in that. And then the face-to-face time is really at a premium. You don't have the luxury of, okay, well, and typically in my experience, if you don't really have the luxury of, all right, we'll just go over this tomorrow or later, because sometimes there is no later. Like that's it. That is your one shot of face of that face-to-face time. Um, but I also found that to be an advantage in the sense of it made sure that I had to think through of how to use the time really effectively. Where, like I said, if you have a lot of face-to-face time, you may not have to have that pressure of being very effective or maybe effective isn't the right word, but or making sure that you're using all of that time every minute to the best of your ability. So you know so again, that those are the three types of environments that I wanted to just kind of review, share some experience, share some advantages, and share some challenges. But for all environments, engaging presentation of the content is a must, whether that is the traditional residential in person or whether it is asynchronously online. An effective application and assimilation of the content to facilitate learning is also a must. So which includes, the clear course design within your learning management system and using, best practices to help guide that learning, no matter what environment you may be currently teaching in or thinking about teaching in. So really making sure that you're basing your teaching on learning sciences and best practices according to that educational literature. Many of us who made the transition from the clinic to teaching don't have much training in teaching or how to best teach your expertise, our expertise to the learners in the programs that we are teaching in. So that really is what, as I mentioned, I got my EDD from University of Florida in educational technology and really led me to earn that and, to want to learn more about teaching and taking my teaching experience and then, growing expertise from that degree and that type of thing. And really, using that to help others, becoming a faculty coach and mentor, helping clinicians make that transition, and then helping faculty members make their jobs easier by providing clear guidance and applying the learning sciences, and ensuring best practices and learning from things from helping you learn from mistakes or learning experiences that I had to say, hey, do not do this because this is what may happen or those types of things. So I hope you learned something new today. Please go ahead and drop in the comments your aha moment or something that really stood out for you or something that you learned. I want to thank you for watching, whether you're on Instagram or in the Facebook group. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, please feel free to message me or leave your questions in the comments. So thank you so much.